Hey guys, welcome back. Got some news. Let's get into the news. Okay, so let's talk about what I've got going on here. So you guys are seeing faith, you're seeing facts. The reason why I brought faith in, guys, because obviously God put it on my heart to do so. Okay, and faith is right now it's at its highest or strongest level than it's ever been before. So yeah, faith is coming forward. Okay, but I separate the news, I separate the facts. If the faith isn't for you, you don't have to open it up and look at it, guys. It's that simple. Okay. But we're going to bring it forward because there's a lot of you that do like to see it and appreciate it. So we're going to cater to everyone here. All right, let's look at the news. So Masroor Barzani, Kurdistan is the most successful model in Iraq, and we have an opportunity that should not be missed. So, today, Monday, October 5th, Prime Minister of Kurdistan Regional Government, Masroor Barzani, confirmed that there is a favorable opportunity to resolve the outstanding differences between Erbil and Baghdad, and it should not be lost, and indicated that the discussion with the federal government are continuing within the framework of the Constitution. In a speech during which presented a report on a full public work, the Prime Minister reviewed the presence of the Deputy Prime Minister, Talabani, and a number of concerned ministers that had been accomplished in the reform project, plans to overcome the financial crisis, combat corona, and service and strategic projects. In the government work report, the Prime Minister addressed the file of the ongoing discussion with the federal government and the situation in the Kurdistan regions outside the region's administration, in addition to the oil, financial, and Peshmerga file. The Prime Minister said that the reform is a permanent process and it will not end overnight. And it has started in many areas, and it will affect various financial sectors and administratively. And he indicated that the health and economic crises facing the Kurdistan region, Iraq, and the world in the midst of the outbreak of the coronavirus, the decline in global oil prices, and Baghdad's refusal to send the region's share, but that did not hinder the implementation of the strategic projects in agriculture, industry, roads, and electricity. The Prime Minister pointed out to allocating about 28 billion dinar to confront corona, and stressed reviewing the tax system as well as fighting red tape to improve job performance in government departments, in addition to linking border crossings and airports with an electronic system to enhance supervision and quality control. He also reviewed a number of electricity products that were recently launched and contributed to raising production to 3,700 megawatts, with processing hours exceeding 20 hours a day. He also talked about health projects, food processing projects, roads which were laid and foundations stone in the past weeks. The Prime Minister emphasized that internal and external debts amount to more than 8.5 trillion dinar, while the total financial liabilities amount to 9.8 trillion dinar, while the total amount of the financial obligations for those who receive salaries is more than 10.5 trillion dinar. So as you guys see, this article is about Kurdistan, but it's also about the reforms, okay, and getting everything improved going forward. Also with differences and reaching that comprehensive agreement. Remember, they already did reach a comprehensive agreement on the 2020 budget. So this would be about the future budgets, the 21 budget, and anything thereafter, okay? So as they tell you, they're already operating and working under the Constitution, and they're very close to reaching an agreement regarding the 21 budgets and beyond, okay? Let's keep moving forward. Parliamentary finance, the remaining deficit of the 2020 budget will reach 20%. Remember before, guys, it was actually at 45%. Remember that? They said regarding the 2020 budget that the deficit was at 45%. So notice how they've got it down to 20%, okay? Member of the Parliamentary Finance Committee confirmed on Sunday that the deficit for the remainder of the 2020 budget will reach 20%. Idris said that it is not possible to use the term budget for the remainder of the months of 2020, but rather a budget which is to which is which is to know the financial situation in Iraq in terms of how much are the expenditures and revenues achieved and follow up on the rest of the other files. Idris added, the budget deficit for the remainder of 2020 is large and amounts to 20% according to available indicators. The government had sent the budget for the remainder of the months of 2020 and then quickly withdrew it to amend it. Okay, so as you guys see, looks like they've brought the deficit down from 45 to 20%. Okay. Parliamentary finance approval of the borrowing law will be conditional on economic reforms. So as you guys see, they're still talking about old stuff. They're talking about the 2020 budget, getting it approved. They're talking about reforms, and as you guys know, they're already revealing to you a lot of the reforms they're ready to bring forth. Guys, and notice how they're just not even able to start the approval process, guys. Because it's all waiting on one thing, the magical rate change. You guys already know when things are going to happen. Things have now been revealed to you, so we're in a great position. All right, so Baghdad News said in a member of the Parliamentary Finance Committee, Monday Parliament approval to borrow this time will be conditional on the government. He said in a televised statement, followed the news Minister of Finance promised the reform paper at the end of last month. That's because it's waiting on the rate change. That's why they couldn't do it. And has provided until now. He added that there is a government supervisory defect regarding submitting the reform paper to Parliament. He added if the borrowing is approved, it will be subject to conditions on the government, noting that the failure to abide by OPEC decisions regarding oil cuts requires a government decision. Guys, let's talk about this for a second. The article before this shows you they reduced a budget down to, they reduced the deficit in the 2020 budget down to 20%. So, yeah, here they're saying if borrowing is approved, right here, and guys, they're done borrowing, okay? They've got it all worked out. They're going to roll with the 2020 budget, okay? Because as you see, they brought the deficit down. Remember, I told you they've already got reforms in the budget. And I already told you there's no way on God's green earth that the deficit was at 45% because Kurdistan and Baghdad came into agreement, full agreement on the 2020 budget, and both parties would have went through the numbers and figures of the 2020 budget with a fine-tooth comb, okay? So most of these articles, like I've been trying to tell you, are all lies and BS. In fact, I brought you a new pattern as of a week ago Sunday, okay? 2 Sundays ago, the new pattern was they've implemented more lies and BS in the articles than they ever have before, guys. This is a disinformation campaign just like both Kuwait and China did because we are now getting very close and approaching the rate change, okay? So, last paragraph. Al-Durahi pointed out that no one accepts lending to Iraq because of the bad government performance and that the situation in Iraq has entered the stage of danger due to the financial crisis and political process may collapse, stressing that the border crossings corrupted and the institution that has passed through the history of Iraq. All right, next one. 5 reasons facing the government reform paper, financial reveal. A member of the Parliamentary Finance Committee, Jamal Cougar, revealed 5 reasons that stand in the way of the government reform paper. Cougar said, there are several reasons that stand in the way of the government reform paper, the most prominent of which are 5, which are the political system was built on air, the involvement of some parties with corruption, the alignment of security and military forces parties, and the Minister of Finance in Mustafa's government received Al-Qademia's 17-year-old heavy corruption legacy. He added, any reform in the government will certainly affect these parties, and therefore they will be in a permanent confrontation. Cougar explained the current government is temporary. It has 4 months, it is 4 months old and ends after 9 months. Remember, that's because they have new elections in June of next year. And it is charged with carrying out major reforms. The Minister of Finance, Amir Alawi, confirmed last September that the reform paper would be presented to the government at the end of the month. They mean in September in that. But again, reforms can't really be, they can't start the approval process, guys, on the reforms until after the rates changed. That's why they're just keep talking about it. That and the 2020 budget, okay, and they're showing this to you. In between, the economic reform program needs a long time to present it due to the fact of the economic situation in Iraq is going through a critical situation due to the repercussions of the previous cumulative economic policies that passed on the Iraqi state since the 1950s in the last century, and so far, especially the legislation of the Agrarian Reform Law and the decisions of the Socialist Package, in addition to the loss of vision. The economy weakened the private sector and left all resources on the hands of the government. Alawi pointed out that the current government suffers from scarcity of funds that forced it to borrow internally and externally. We covered all that in great detail. And it cannot implement the presentation of the paper within the period specified by the law voted on. And that's that financial management law, guys. That's kind of the tool used to commission the rate change. All right. Barzani announces an agreement on joint management of border crossings in Kurdistan. The president of the Kurdistan region, Barzani, announced on Monday the agreement with the federal government to jointly manage the border crossings in the region while affirming his government's commitment to handing over the region's oil revenues of the federal government. Barzani said during his presence in the Kurdistan parliament session that the regional government is committed to handing over the region's exported oil imports to the federal government, noting that the region will commit to reducing oil production. He added he agreed with Prime Minister Kademi to increase security coordination and dialogues between the Peshmerga forces and the Federal Ministry of Defense, in addition to an agreement to form 6 joint security points. He emphasized linking the border crossings with the unified electronic system with the formation of a special committee to combat smuggling at border crossings, expressing his optimism in agreement with Baghdad on a joint management of border crossings. Regarding financial reforms, the head of the regional government said he explained the government was unable to increase the hours of supplying electricity power to 21 hours a day, and that the crisis we are going through is the corona pandemic crisis, which is a global crisis. Parliament movement to hold an emergency session of Parliament to discuss the salary crisis. Committee revealed on Monday a movement to collect parliamentary signatures to hold an emergency session due to delaying the payment of employee salaries. Committee member, the Minister of Finance, informed the committee for monitoring the government program during his hosting of more than 2 weeks ago to secure the salaries of employees for the remaining months of the current year, stressing that he was not committed to the reform paper that is part of the borrowing law. He added the oil revenues, the price of which reached $40 per barrel, are sufficient to cover the salaries of all employees for the month of September. Earlier, wait, look at that, guys. The oil revenues, that was very detailed right there. Let's look at that. I highlighted it blue for you. The oil revenues, the price of which reached $40 per barrel, are sufficient to cover the salaries of all employees for the month of September, guys. That's the reason why they don't have to use internal loans anymore. And that's why they're going to run with the 2020 budget, because again, it has enough funds in it right now to cover what they need. So that's why they're showing you they're done borrowing based on that statement. Earlier, Finance Minister Alawi mortgaged the release of employees' salaries by the House of Representatives vote on the borrowing law. Talabani, there is no alternative for Kurdistan but an agreement with Baghdad. This would be over the comprehensive agreement. Vice President of the Kurdistan region, Talabani, confirmed the government's readiness to reach an agreement with the federal government, indicating that there is no alternative for the Kurdistan but an agreement with Baghdad. Talabani said during his response questions for members of the Kurdistan parliament during the session in which Parliament hosted Prime Minister Barzani, government of heading to Baghdad to agree when the economic conditions deteriorated, noting that when we reached a preliminary agreement with Baghdad in December of 2019, the price of a barrel of oil was between $60 and $70 a barrel, and at that time we were ready to hand over 50% of non-oil revenues to the federal government and also hand over imports of 250,000 barrels of oil per day. Talabani added, also today we are ready to deliver 250,000 barrels of oil per day and imports to deliver 50 non-oil revenues according to the Constitution and the law in exchange for obtaining full financial dues to the Kurdistan region. Taliban stressed the alternative to agreeing with the federal government is to agree with the federal government and to organize Kurdish House administratively, politically, and socially, and despite that it is necessary to agree with Baghdad, stressing that Iraq must agree with the region for its long-term interest, there is internal pressure on the region and the federal government to reach an agreement between the sides. Guys, notice that this is all just a dog and pony show. If you guys remember, I think it was the day of or the day after, so it was like either August 20th or August 21st. Guys, an article came out announcing that both Kurdistan and Baghdad were already in full agreement. So I just want to share that with you guys. This is just all, Iraq is much farther along than what they're telling you, okay? That's why all they're doing right now is just a song and dance. They're just talking about it. This is all chatter. Central Bank, first implementation of steps to reform for the banking sector. The central bank announced on Monday that it will implement its first steps for the banking sector, indicating that the classification of private, commercial, and Islamic banks operating in Iraq has been completed according to a set of international standards, in addition to a number of standards approved by the bank. This step comes from within the framework of enhancing confidence in the banking sector and improving the quality of services provided to the public, as well as enhancing competitiveness in the Iraqi banking sector. The bank added in a statement he emphasized that he had previously asked the lagging banks more than once to work on correcting their situation and paying their customers' dues. Therefore, this classification will be an opportunity for those banks to improve their seriousness in achieving reforms or reform requirements and pay the dues to depositors and shareholders. He continued, the next stage will include the process of reforming the government banks. So right here they're saying the next stage, guys, one of the things I've shown you through time is periodically articles would reference the phrase the next stage. What that is, guys, is that's the period that comes when the rate changes. Okay, they're calling that the next stage. Again, that's the period when the rate changes. The next stage will include the process of reforming the government banks. So they're telling you when or after the rate changes, that period will include the process of reforming government banks, guys. So even they're telling you right here, guys, they can't even start the implementation of the reforms until the rates change, guys. That's why they referenced reforms after the next stage, okay? Noting that the reform measures that have been adopted depend mainly on the central bank law, number 56, 2004 of the Iraqi banking law, number 94 of 2004, and the instructions and controls issued according to them. Al-Tamimi, Parliament is able to pass a borrowing law within 6 days. But guys, this is BS. We're not even going to read this. I don't care about this article. They already showed you they've reduced the debt. But again, they're lying to you on that. They showed you just in that article that they already now have the deficit down to 20%. Let's back up for a second, guys. Let's just go to the 2020 budget roughly a month and a half ago. Remember how they kept telling you regarding the 2020 budget that it didn't have any funds in it? Or, I'm sorry, it had just enough funds to cover only government operating expenses? Then I showed you an article on a Friday a few weeks ago where they came out saying, oh, yeah, there actually are reforms. And remember I told you they've been lying to you the whole time? This is what they're telling you. So they show you an article showing you that, oh, yeah, the deficit's too high in the budget. It's at 45%. Well, now they magically have an article where they tell you it's down to 20%, guys. Guys, all of these articles are pure BS. They're lies to you. Okay? These articles are all lies. None of this information is accurate. That's what I'm saying right now, guys. Since a week ago Sunday, which would have been 2 Sundays ago, this is the same article as the last one, so we're not going to read it. Since a week ago Sunday, guys, they've been lying to you. They've been lying to you at their highest level. Again, guys, it's simple. This is a disinformation campaign to implement confusion and they want you confused and misled. And that's what this is about. It's a disinformation campaign, okay? That's why. Notice how they're just giving you different angles of BS on the 2020 budget. Okay, and I gave you like 4 different examples. How about a month ago they said that the 2020 budget only had funds in it to cover operating expenses. Then they come out telling you a couple Fridays ago that, oh yeah, it's got reforms in it. Then they come out and tell you right after that, oh yeah, the deficit's at 45%. Now they're coming out and telling you the deficit's at 20%. Guys, all they're doing is burning time on the calendar. They're just burning the midnight oil, guys, because they can't show these numbers. Remember, they told you in like 4 different articles they're hiding the 2020 budget figures and numbers from you. They have yet to show the true numbers, guys. That's because it's most likely calculated in the billions, not trillions of dinar. Okay, those are post-rate change figures, and that's why they won't even let Parliament see them. That's why they're hiding it, guys, because all this crap is waiting on the rate change. Central Bank direct implementation of steps to reform the banking sector. Central Bank announced on Monday that it will implement its first reform steps. Well, guys, you actually just saw an article where it said that the banking reforms come in the next stage. So, no, these articles that are suggesting they may have started or implemented banking reforms, guys, hasn't happened. They cannot implement any reforms till after the rates change. That's why I just showed you the one article. It said it referenced in the next stage, meaning after the rate change. That's when they will be implementing banking reforms. They told you that word for word. The central bank announced on Monday that it will implement its first reform steps for the banking sector, indicating that the classification of private commercial and Islamic banks operating in Iraq has been completed according to a set of international standards in addition to a number of standards approved by the bank. This step comes from within the framework of enhancing confidence in the banking sector and improving the quality of services provided to the public, as well as enhancing competitiveness to the Iraqi banking sector, to the bank added in a statement. He emphasized that he had previously asked the lagging banks more than once to work on correcting their situation and paying their customers' dues. Therefore, the classification will be an opportunity for the banks to prove their seriousness in achieving reform requirements and pay their dues to depositors and shareholders. He continued that, again, here's the next stage, guys. That means after the rate change. The next stage will include the process of reforming banks as well. Okay, so guys, none of the reforms will be starting until after the rate has changed. It's that simple. Noting that the reform measures have been adopted and depending mainly on the central bank and the Iraqi banking law and the instructions controls issued by them. So now, guys, I think this is... Nope, it's not the last one. Here's a tweet, guys, from the Iraqi government where basically Kademi did a tweet and it says, in an interview, he says he will soon publish a white paper on economic reforms and outlines how the newly established Federal Public Service Council will regulate appointments to jobs in the public sector in Iraq. So he's just doing a tweet saying they're close to implementing reforms. Okay? The white paper on economic reforms promised by Kademi completes. This was from yesterday, Sunday. An informed source reported that the reform paper promised by the government of Prime Minister Kademi regarding the economic situation that Iraq is going through has been completed. The source added to the People, the white paper consists of 2 parts and includes reforms to the financial situation in the country of Iraq, will be presented to Kademi during this week, and after that the House of Representatives. He added the reforms included in the paper included radical solutions to gradually save the country and stabilize its financial and economic situation. On Sunday, Finance Minister Abdul Amir Alawi confirmed that Iraq will move from the traditional budget to a program budget within a year and a half, indicating that the tax rate will not be high, but the citizen will not accept it for providing the necessary services. Alawi said in a statement to the official agency and the People followed by him that the budgets for the years of 21 to 23, again, the reason they're doing a 3-year budget is because they're implementing the reforms in steps and phases, and they have the reforms spread out over about a 4-year period or 3.5-year period. The reforms are being spread out from half of 2020, okay, for the 6-month 2020 budget, and then over the 3-year period from 21 to 23, okay? They're going to spread the reforms out over that 3.5-year period. That's why they're doing a multi-year budget. We have started working on them now, but they will not. But the main ones, because the Ministry of Finance is currently unable to implement it in a complete way, and it may hinder it for a year and a half, so that we can move from a traditional budget and draw on the method to a program budget. He added, tax revenues constitute a very small percentage of states' resources, and it is not high if compared to any other country because the tax structure is reasonable in Iraq. He pointed out that citizens will not respond to taxes, and they may have justification because the state does not provide them with necessary services, so the level of taxes must be linked to services in their quality. He continued, it is assumed that we get 8 trillion dinar from the taxes, while we currently are getting less than 1 trillion because there are large exemptions and exemptions. He stated, Iraq contains a kind of state seizure, as it is not necessary for the seizure to be the parties, but it may be from all parties that have stake and influence on the decision making. He stressed the need to be subject to completely different professional controls and ways of working, and the solution must be a kind of separate between the legitimate and semi-legal requirements of political parties. According to the electoral results, because of the balance is difficult, so that we have a complete independent government apparatus which does not exist now. All right, guys, you got the gist of this. This is a very long article that I'm just, wow, holy cow. Yeah, I'm done reading that. Anyway, guys, you got the gist. As you guys see, though, again, like I told you, remember I told you yesterday, okay, in my opinion, yesterday, Sunday, I told you, I said the only real thing of credibility you're going to see this whole week is on Saturday the 10th. They told us that's when they're going to approve the electoral law, or the election law, okay? That's really all you can. This is just all talk. All they're doing, it's just soap opera. They've brought you a whole bunch of different BS angles on the 2020 budget, guys. And too many parties went through the 2020 budget with a fine-tooth comb. Plus, Kurdistan and Baghdad already came into full agreement already on the 2020 budget, guys. That's why they're rolling out BS to mislead and confuse, because it's a disinformation campaign. That's what they do before rate changes, guys. Both Kuwait and China already did it. So, you guys are the best. God bless you guys, and have a great evening.